Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a science fiction horror film from Canada, English language, released in the year 2017, directed by Jeremy Gillespie and Stephen Konstanski, and this film is called The Void. So The Void is about a police officer who's on night duty. He comes across this man who has stumbled out of the woods who is seriously injured. So this policeman takes him back to a hospital in the middle of nowhere where his wife works, and in this hospital they sedate him because this man is going a little bit out, over the top as far as being difficult is concerned. So while he's been sedated and while he's sleeping, they're trying to come to terms with what's going on. But then this is where the night is about to escalate into further weirdness, when they realise outside there are a lot of people who are dressed in cloaks. Now these people have knives and they're hell-bent on not allowing anyone to get out of this hospital. So for whatever reason, they're safe enough as it is when they're inside, but if they're outside, they're going to get attacked. And so as the movie goes along, they start to suspect that something otherworldly is going within this hospital that is causing these cloaked people to protect it. And at the same time, they start to realise that the man that they've brought into the hospital who is injured might have something to do with it as well. So the answers are going to prove absolutely devastating and nightmarish. And to prevent myself from giving away anything else, if you want to know how this movie unfolds and what's in store for the characters, go out there and see it for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Void. After seeing this film, I thought to myself, this is the interpretation of what it would be like if you were condemned to hell. If you left this world and you were a sinner and you've done all the horrible things and you're condemned to the world of Satan, The Void is definitely an interpretation of what that would be like. It's just an absolutely incredible atmosphere that the movie creates. It creates an atmosphere that is very reminiscent of the works of John Carpenter's The Thing, with the science fiction themes as well. It's very reminiscent of that film. But then you've also got other films like the hellish descent of Hellraiser, where you actually feel like you're in a world that is disgusting, that is absolutely horrid, and you don't want to be there, but you have to be there. And I thought it really captured what made Hellraiser as interesting as it was. And then you've also got another comparison to a very recent film from Turkey called Baskin, where it's just a descent into everything that is filthy. It's a descent into something that actually makes it feel like a genuine horror experience. And that's the best thing that The Void does. It does horrify you. It does disgust you. It's everything that you want from a horror film that is packed into one, and it makes it a very rewarding experience for anyone who is a fan of this type of thing. So it's an independent film, but it's definitely an independent film of the higher order. It's an independent film that really specialises in practical effects. There's no CGI in this film, which is something I absolutely loved. Once again, very reminiscent of the films I've just mentioned. It is a movie that does pay respect to films of the 80s, or the films of yesteryear, where it was all about that very tense atmosphere. And I thought the hospital in this film really transforms into something far greater, and you start to think, okay, I'm losing my mind here. I'm on a hellish descent, and this is everything I want from an experience that I was expecting. You know, this movie does live up to the hype. Thankfully, I really enjoyed everything that was going on in this movie, and there's a lot of themes in this film that are intertwined in it to make it a little bit deeper than you would initially think. Is that you've got this main character, the policeman, who has had a checkered past, who's had a little bit of trauma in his past, and you think that it's coming back to haunt him, and that everything that is bad in life is being intensified to a point where you feel like this is an environment that you don't want to be in. You're entertained by what the film is producing, but there's an element of the film that makes you feel very uncomfortable. And at the end of the film, I thought to myself, okay, this is the type of movie that would give me nightmares in the past. When I was young, I would watch films like The Exorcist, and The Exorcist gave me nightmares. And I can tell you this: if I watched The Void back when I was young, I would have had nightmares as well. And not a lot of horror films do this, is because they're more interested in very shallow sort of aspects as far as excessive gore and, as I said, excessive nudity and sex scenes. But this movie doesn't have excessive sex scenes, but it does have excessive gore. But the excessive gore feels like it's working for the purpose of making you feel like you're in hell. And as I said to start this review, this is what the interpretation of hell would be. And so you've got these very outlandish moments that I thought were great. Some monsters that come into the film that were disgusting. There is some excessive gore that was very shocking. And so, yeah, I mean, everything I expected coming into this film was delivered, and that's something I really liked. I thought the supporting cast were all great. What I liked about these characters is that I actually cared for them, and that these extreme situations that were happening to them, I just felt very sorry for them, and I just thought to myself, thank God I'm not in this situation, because I don't know what I would do. And when these actual monsters actually get a hold of these people, it's ghastly, and so it really makes you feel as though you want to stay away from these people. You want these people to stay, to evade the capture of these hellish monsters. And so as the movie progresses, it gets more and more bizarre, and the imagery is absolutely fantastic. This is an incredibly surreal film, which really gives you that sort of environment of hell. And so, yeah, as far as production is concerned, this one was absolutely top-notch. It had a very haunting soundtrack. It had very haunting scenes where it's just showing the sky, which I thought was just very, very uncomfortable. So everything in the film reeks of atmosphere, and that's something that I wasn't expecting as much. I was expecting more of a gore fest, but what I got was a lot more than what I first anticipated. So the continuity of the film is very good. It doesn't take long to get into the good stuff, but it gives you enough platform in order to actually connect to these characters. And so you've got a whole host of characters. You've got a pregnant woman, you've got her grandfather, you've got a hospital worker, a very young hospital worker, and you've got a few you've got this policeman. And so they all come together, and it feels like Earth versus hell, and that you know that hell is just going to engulf these people, and you're just waiting for it. It's just basically an inevitable car wreck, but it's a car wreck that you do not want to see, because it'll scar you for life. And so this is the type of film that does that. So it does have very strong science fiction themes, which is something that will appeal to science fiction fans, but then the horror aspect is definitely the best aspect, and I thought they nailed everything as far as that is concerned. So my only problems with the film was that I thought that it got a little bit too ambitious in its story. I thought it was a little bit too complicated for its own good, and that when the really bad things are happening, because they're so shocking, because they're so sort of out of this, out of the blue, you start to get distracted by that. So it's very easy to lose your concentration in this film, and if you lose your concentration, you will not know what's going on. But I actually knew that to start the film. I saw a few other people saying they didn't know what was going on. It was way too complicated. So I set out to concentrate very hard in actually following the story, and I managed to do that. But it is very difficult. If you're not expecting a film that is going to make you concentrate, then you could easily lose what's going on, because you get lost in the horrific sequences of violence, the horrific sequences of just absolute insanity, and so it's very easy to just distract you from the story. And I thought that the overall story needed to be a little bit more simplistic than it was in order for the casual viewer to really enjoy it. But if you can really concentrate and follow the story, then you're going to really enjoy it. It just gives it that much more punch, and it's definitely a film that I would recommend, even for replay value. I just thought it was up there with Baskin, Hellraiser, and even John Carpenter's The Thing. So it does intertwine a lot of themes. It is very ambitious. For me, that ambition paid off, but for the casual viewer, I think it might be a little bit too much. But definitely go out there and see it if this sounds like your kind of thing. So overall, for The Void, going to give it 4 stars. I highly recommend it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.